Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The most atrocious problem of the wizarding world is an identity supremacy, and that's what we will break from side opening government. Notice that the most atrocious wars that happen within Hogwarts, and the best of instances, because all of these guys know about Voldemort. The reason why Voldemort caused the last war of Hogwarts was because the Gaunt family, which was part of the 28th family, was able to mobilize other families like the Lestrange, the Black family, within the idea that they need to fight against all mad bloods that existed within Hogwarts, because pure bloods are the people that necessarily have the capacity to rule the wizarding world. At a point where we break that asymmetry from side opening government, it means the recurrence of ideological wars, familial and ethnic wars that existed on their side of the house. And the oppression of mad bloods is one that we socially engineer at Hogwarts. We can't be able to do such from opening government because they say, and the info slides say, they spent 7 years there. We think from contact theory, we are able to socially engineer them within Hogwarts on our side of the house. We are happy to do so. This debate is going to be very mechanistic. I don't like the type of debating that happens in Africa where people decide they wouldn't listen to your mechanisms and come and run bullshit within the round. First of all, competition. Notice that the competition that exists within Hogwarts is between houses. What this means is that each house comes as a unit to fight against a house, or to probably compete against a house as another unit. Why do we know this is true? And this is the important framing you should take within this debate, regardless of whatever will come. Because if you look at the Quidditch game that is played in Harry Potter, it is Gryffindor against Slytherin. It is Hufflepuff against probably Gryffindor. That is the kind of representation that happens within this debate. We can't have any debate about even within the house they compete against themselves and all those nonsense. That will cause narrative fragmentation, which means that they cannot coexist within the house to do all the other things that they do as a unit. That cannot be the debate. The biggest case that can come from this side is that, these people were never friends. They came to Hogwarts, so why should you let them mix? Why should they be friends? How are we able to socially engineer so? I'm able to analyze to you that the time framing favors us to do contact theory to erase all the subconscious. We can use a lot of things. We can use operant conditioning because they are in Hogwarts for 7 years. We can condition them to socially engineer them to now love one another or to be able to tolerate themselves. We can do a whole lot of things. We engineer them through things like reverse groupthink. We can do all those things on our side of the house. That cannot be the debate. But lastly, that is exactly why we need to do this at Hogwarts, because then Hogwarts becomes the biggest machinery and a controlled system where when you put them together, you are able to monitor them and all those other stuff. You have people like Dumbledore, who was one of the greatest magicians that exists, which means that even if someone had an extraordinary magic capacity, Dumbledore will be able to control that person within that instance to not hurt those people that exist within that instance, which means that the social engineering is something that we are able to do on our side. The model from our side is pretty very simple. The comparative is that we divide them into groups, which whether you're a mad blood, whether you're a pure blood, whether you're a muggle or whatever thing, all of them will probably, if it's group A, in group A we have a mad blood, we have a muggle, we have all this other stuff. The comparative on your side is that most of the people that go to things like Slytherin are people that have ties with the Gaunt family. So people like Voldemort, people like Tornado, people like Draco Malfoy, who are part of the Gaunt family, who are believed to speak with snakes, all those other stuff, because of the linear asymmetry that exists. But secondly, the way in which pure blood is able to train its people is that because the pure bloods were able to have a lot of money within that instance, they were able to train them into specific characters. They were able to train them to have specific character traits such that when they enter into Hogwarts, the heart will sort them into Slytherin, such that you have people from the Gaunt family always going into things like Slytherin. You have people from the Antioch family always going into things like Gryffindor. And that's why Potter was able to go into Gryffindor and all those other stuff. What you create on your side is an echo chamber. Now the debate's proper. Why is the echo chamber particularly terrible? There are two reasons why you create that echo chamber. Because of lineage as an ideological prison, which I've analyzed to you because of the family system of Hogwarts. But secondly, the maintenance of the pure blood ideology from most of these very dominant houses like Slytherin, Gryffindor. Why are these important in of itself? Because notice that most of these people that get into Hogwarts are the same people that go on into things like the Ministry of Magic to control the magical world, because they are trained to take those positions. What this means is that when you create that echo chamber, those are the same people that go into the Ministry of Magic to now oppress people. So for example, we don't care about Muggle bonds. Muggle bonds are shit. They should probably go to Hufflepuff or all those other stuff. What this means is that when you get these like people, because they come from very rich families, they can lobby to win the wizardry elections, all those other stuff. So those in Slytherin and Gryffindor are the ones that mostly get into the Ministry of Magic that exists. What you do on your side, because you were not able to re-engineer them to tolerate a lot of people within that side, they send that same ideology into the Ministry of Magic, and they constantly set laws that's able to hurt muggles, that's able to hurt a lot of people, like werewolves that existed within that side. And that's why most of the ministers of magic were able to set stringent laws that was able to push most of these werewolves into the bush and all those stuff, and they were not able to get repression on our side. What's the comparative? Before they say we don't do comparative, on our side, we have put you together. We've socially engineered you to tolerate these people. You have shared a lot of things with them. You are going to see them as probably your friends, all those things. And you know that when you make stringent laws at the Ministry of Magic, it will affect them. It means that on our side, the very idea that we are pure blood, so let's just hurt everybody else is shit, is what we socially re-engineer at Hogwarts when we ban this sorting hat and we ban the houses on our side. It means three things. A, the very minorities that are so hurt in the wizarding world are most likely protected. But secondly, we break the very, very toxic echo chamber ideology that sits within the subconscious of most of these people like Voldemort to want to still protect that pure blood like ideology by saying that let's eliminate everyone. Because if you look at the people that joined Voldemort to become Death Eaters, there were houses like the Lestrange house, the Black house. Most of these people were like pure bloods who were not neutralized within Hogwarts. On our side of the house, we break that mobilization mechanism of itself and that ideology, which means that we solve the wars on your side and we are able to protect minorities within this debate. Incredibly proud to win from opening Gav.
The House recognizes the...
I'm sorry, we're not enforcing the rule throughout the tournament that...
So the 15 seconds if you don't take a PY.
Yeah, we saw time, at the 7. Because you didn't take a PY. Just a kind reminder, if you don't take a PY, we'll stop the time at exactly 7 minutes. You know how to extra 15 seconds. But also, teams are encouraged to actually take PYs.
That we didn't hear it.
Same.
I think confused, like. Okay. Hello everyone. Hi. So firstly, shout outs. I'd like to shout out to University of Ilorin Debate Club, Semeboda Cartel, oh, and Godfrey Okoye University, that's my new union. So shout out to them as well. Shout out to the Coven, they know themselves. And shout out to, while it pains me to say, my partner, he has been amazing throughout the tournament. So shout out to him as well. All right, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, please do not fall into just Johnson's trap where he basically just mumbles a whole lot of nonsense and gives no clarity within his speech. Because he says that there's a common problem with the house systems. So let's not group people into houses. Let's randomly group them and just have individuals just associate together and hence we can engineer them, right? But recognize that this is not just a random society. We're talking about Hogwarts School of Witchcraft, which means first and foremost, this is an educational institution, right? And if you have to view whatever it is they're doing on what would exactly benefit these individuals and what would exactly make sure that Hogwarts School of Witchcraft necessarily continues to advance, right? What is it that they say? They say that identity supremacy is a problem within Hogwarts, right? We agree, but we do not think that a world without systems is one that further entrenches that, because recognize that within the info slide, it is stated clearly that these are individuals who are grouped on things like your intellect, your ambition, that is what you aspire to be, and what it is you hope to be, and the kind of character traits in which necessarily imbibe as a human being. So we say that this is not a house system that is based on things like whether you're a pure blood or whether you're a new blood or whatever it is. This is something that is inherently based on your characteristics and the different traits in which you have as a human. We think that is very much better than the world in which they propose. Why? Because we think that the world in which they propose is one where, let's even assume their best case scenario, where you allow individuals to just simply free mingle, right? And you do not group them into houses. Recognize that people are drawn to each other on the basis of things like status, culture, and what they share. You're more likely going to have identity supremacy being entrenched in their own world because people of similar status will continue to flock together. It's why the rich continue to flock with the rich and would rather be friends with the rich as opposed to associating with you, the poor. This is very much common sense, right? The second thing they say is context theory is something that is going to, a lot of my other responses to them will be very much imbibed within my speech. We need to talk about Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and what exactly is this that they do and why do they exist the way they do. Just like they said, right? This is an institution that groups people on the basis of houses. We think it's just like your regular educational institution, right? Where they group you on things like classes. So you're in GS1, you're in GS2, things like that. It's why we have AP classes, right? Okay, so it seems like you do better in advanced math than your mates. So you and you who seems to do a lot more better in math have a separate math class. It's why we have special education classes for people like juniors. The reason why they exist like that is because educational institutions exist to maximize potential. And you have to necessarily interrogate in what world would Hogwarts be able to maximize the potential of these guys. Yeah, sure, we want to eradicate educational supremacy, identity supremacy, but first and foremost, we want to make sure that the kind of graduates in which we churn out from this school is the kind of graduates that when they get into positions of power, they are able to deliver well, aside from just simply, they no longer discriminate and stuff. Recognize that in order to be able to maximize potential of these individuals, you have to do things like recognize their talents, their skills, and their ambitions and own it. Recognize at the point in which an institution begin to turn their blind eye or simply do no longer cares about things like your intellect, right, and your characteristics and what you thrive best at. It is at that point in which an educational institution has lost it. Because if you cannot own people's ambition because you did not care about it in the first place, it's at that point in which you can no longer be able to necessarily help them go better within that particular stance. CEO, please.
Yeah. The things along which they align them is not things like how much potential you have. So you are creating a different debate from what.
Okay, so panel, that means at this point you have to fault cap, not us, because I think it's very much clear in the info slide that these are people who are like, what is it called, who are grouped on the basis of things like your intellect, your ambition, your intelligence, your bravery, and all those kind of things. We don't necessarily, I'm not taking you can come back and defend your speech, right? But why is it important to do things like recognize skills and talents? We tell you that to a very large extent, there's a need for competition and evaluation. It is the very principal reasons why educational institutions exist. So we tell you, at a world in which you necessarily want to crumble the way individuals compete, because we recognize if you decide to go with their world where people simply free range, right, or people simply free mingle, you cannot begin to necessarily do things like access, like what is it called, evaluate skill level. But even if you're able to do that, you cannot do that very much well, right, because you have individuals who you just simply allow them necessarily free range and you do not group them into classes. But also recognize that iron sharpened iron, right? And they want to say that, competition is largely external. We don't think that's the way it works, right? There's a reason why we have things like first position within classes and stuff like that. That is because competition is both internal and external. We think their world is one where you even further fraction competition at the point where you allow individuals of different skill sets, of different ambitions at that point in time begins to necessarily flamingo. But the second thing is just on necessarily like how these guys can get better. Because notice, they also tell you that these are houses that are also based on things like ambitions. Why is that very much important? If you do not necessarily take into account your students' ambition and based on that ambition create a curriculum for them or allow them operate on their ambition and give them a clear path that would help them succeed within that particular ambition, you cannot necessarily, bring out good students. There's a reason why the moment you get into SHS, you're necessarily divided into things like science, art, commercial, because your ambition matters, and that is why they faction you into houses based on that. Imagine if science, art, and commercial were all merged into one, simply in the name of, oh, we don't necessarily want to associate, like we don't necessarily want to separate individuals, let's have them merged together. But the only thing that comes from these guys is on the eye of identity supremacy and how best we necessarily can solve it. We say it is in a house, it is in our world we best solve it, right? Even if we want to agree that our current system is not one that is perfect, we say that we're more than willing to necessarily improve on it, right? So as opposed to just simply creating a whole house where everybody, like a whole system where everybody begins to mingle together and there are no classes, we say that at the point in which you have mixtures within houses, create games or create like team house building activities that would allow these guys mingles better. If the idea is to socially engineer them, we think can still do that within houses, given the fact that houses are not only composed of individuals that come from a certain status or that come from a certain class. What exactly do we tell you in today's debate, and why exactly do we win? We tell you that Hogwarts is first and foremost an educational institution, right? So you need to be able to ensure that whatever it is you want to do, right, whatever policy you're making, is one that allows Hogwarts to fulfill its first role as an educational institution that would own these guys to take over whatever positions it is you want to take over. And Hogwarts cannot necessarily function at a point where you remove its core, its core responsibility, which is to own people's ambition and to necessarily help them develop their skills. You cannot own people when you necessarily neglect their ambitions or you allow them free range without catering to the specific needs or to the specific skill levels of individuals. We say from our side that you help people not only get better with their ambition, but you also allow for things like healthy competition, and you're able to necessarily evaluate them better. We're proud to come from OG. Sorry. Wait. That? Oh.
The house now the Prime Minister, but that is
Shout out to everyone who is here to watch the finals, and to all the teams, congratulations on making it to the finals. Good luck to all teams. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. The entirety of Ops case is simple. The school is meant to sharpen the best side of you so that you become the best. And the entirety of our case is proving why it is very important to group these guys into their best skills so that they become better people. The reason why that is false is because educational systems are meant to expand your identity, not narrow your identity. The reason why that is particularly important is that the motion fiats on their side of the house that the people are sorted based on specific kind of identity, which means that except for competition, the only time you get to meet another person is no time at all, because the only time you get to meet someone who has a separate trait other than you is when you compete against them. That means that on their side of the house, you do not have that kind of development that is needed for them to be shaped into the best version of themselves. But more importantly, identity in itself is very fluid. The reason why you have different agents of socialization in community, you don't just have school, you have churches, you have friendship, you have other means of socialization. The reason why that is particularly important is that is that if you really want people to develop to the best version of themselves, you must be able to allow them interact with other people within a particular space that allow them have other traits that they otherwise would not have had. That interaction creates for a more complete development and wholeness of a person, as opposed to making them just stick to people who are just like them. Then she says that this example is very similar to you being able to be in a science class and being taught science. Before you go to a science class, if you ever did high school, you did the junior high school when you offered all the basic courses before you eventually decided to say, this is what I want to study particularly. What that means is at their early age, there's a need for that cross-sectional interaction of traits with people who are not like them. If you are brave, you need someone who is intelligent. If you're intelligent, you need someone with ambition. We think that that consistent interaction makes for a more holistic person as opposed to what they put at their side of the house. We think that that is fundamentally anti-education as they try to achieve. But more importantly, she says that competition is very bad if you're competing with someone who has a different trait other than you. Because the entirety of her speech also proves why she says competition is very terrible, because you'll be competing with someone else who probably does not have the same trait as you. The reason why that is important is that that competition needs to exist if they have to become the best version of themselves. Because when they eventually get to interact with the real world, they are meeting other people who are not like them, which means that they would have had prior interaction with people who are also not like them and have been able to know how to interact and communicate with those people in that regard. What the school does is to label people and sort them into different classes and allow them to live in echo chambers, like Johnson analyzed to you in his speech. Why do we think, yes?
Apart from the fact that your comparative is the same thing that exists, you have to ask why they do not interact with other people in the 15 years before they come to Hogwarts, and the rest of their lifetime after Hogwarts, with the fluidity they say they cannot change.
Number one, that is their most formative years. Number two, what they are being taught specifically in Hogwarts is what is needed for their own fulfillment outside of Hogwarts, which means that the most fundamental and crucial period where they need to have cross interaction with other people is when they are in Hogwarts. That's why that particular interaction is very important. But more importantly, let's talk about why we think that this further entrenches things like prejudice and social division. We think that currently there's a competition that already exists between people who are probably Slytherin and the other names of the groups as we've said. The reason why, if you allow them to live in that echo chamber, it becomes very bad is that things like identity-based segregation continues to exist. And that is the harm that Johnson analyzes to you, that the wars that happen within families is as a result of the identity-based segregation that happened while they were at Hogwarts. The reason why, if you see someone, for example, from the northern part of Nigeria, you see him as someone who is probably an illiterate or does not have enough educational capacity to interact with you, is because you've lived in an echo chamber in the West for a long period of time and have had less interaction with that person. So you're likely to see him as a human being because you have less cordial interaction with that particular person. We think that what this does is that it creates some form of stereotype that makes their interaction only based on competition and no form of social interaction that would make them a lot better. What the school does is that they institutionalize things like stigma, and they force the children to probably be part of that system that creates a stigma for them even before they are able to make choices for themselves. Because recognize, these children are being put into these groups before they have broadened cognitive capacity to be able to decide what they want to be. But because they live within that echo chamber, they have no choice than to conform to that echo chamber and decide to be bad people. I've taken them, I'm not taking you. We think that why this is bad is that the school has accidentally radicalized students by isolating them socially, and it creates a number of things. Johnson already analyzes why there's an ideological echo chamber that has been created. But more importantly, the wars that has happened in that particular world, in the wizarding world, is because of that family echo chamber that has been created right from the start of segregating them into schools. We think that children already become shaped by their family beliefs, and they inherit assumptions and fights that they otherwise wouldn't have inherited without that particular segregation. Why do we think having a narrow identity is bad? We think that one group learns things like loyalty, another group learns something like ambition. What that means is they are more likely to be rewarded based on what they conform to. So you're not likely to have
students being rewarded based on having a complete trait of fundamental development as human beings because they do not have the opportunity to interact with people from those other traits. What that means is you do not have the chance to access people as a whole based on who they are, but only based on where their class comes from. What that abolishment does is that, number one, it removes that form of self-identity reinforcement that they previously had, but more importantly, it gives them wholesome development in and of themselves. That means that a brave child is able to learn something like empathy. An ambitious child is able to learn things like intelligence. What this does is that it creates fluidity of identity. If their case is about people are probably fulfilling their best of their potential, you're more likely to have their potential being fulfilled in that regard. At the end of the day, this is what we do. Competition already exists within Hogwarts. When you divide them into groups, not based on their identity, but simply based on division, which means that in a particular house, you can have people embodying different traits. They become wholesome people. They live to the fullness of their potential, and they are able to become better moral agents of moral change. And more importantly, you reduce wars that have been entrenched by family identities that have existed here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So first, I want to start by saying that everyone here looks super pretty, especially the panel. Second, I just wanted to say that it's been 2 days in Kwasi and it felt like home. Not because I've felt welcome, but because all the problems I have at home, I also have them here. So yeah, thank you for making me feel at home. It's always a pleasure to be in the grand finals. Thank you to everyone who's supported me to this point. My partner, my brothers, top boys, all my debate unions, all my buddies, thank you for keeping me alive. All right. Most of you have not watched Harry Potter, so I'm going to keep this very simple so you get what is happening here. We have a school. The people that go to this school are divided in 2 ways. Some of them are divided based on class, old money, pure blood, those that are rich. They are the people that are poor. That's one division. Then when they go to school from their homes based on that origin, they get divided again based on the skills they have or based on the traits they have as individuals. So some, regardless of whether you are old money, pure blood, all those things, they put you in different classes and that is how you grow. The equivalent of this is when you are rich or poor or whatever and you go to public school, but because you are 6 foot tall, they put you in basketball class and they group you together. The grouping is based on traits. What they say is that we have ideological inequality by virtue of grouping people together based on that. The first thing we want to say is that our world distributes the prestige that they already absorb before they even enter school. All of those different pure blood, poverty, prestige, all of those different levels they have, we split it. It means that in a specific class, let's call it courage, right? I'm trying to simplify it. Let's call it courage. When we get to that class, we'll have people from all these different classes. It doesn't matter whether your dad is rich or poor, we are going to group you based on that. That's the first thing. The second thing is their counterfactual. What they tell you and I apologize to those watching, is I just have to look at them. The next thing they tell you about is their counterfactual. They say that their counterfactual is a world where they randomly group these people, and then when they randomly group them, they are going to force them to have a synergy. there are two problems. The first, if they think that they can by some form of magic force them to have a synergy, then they can by some form of magic fix the supposed division that they had in the first place. But the second thing is that we think that the tribalism that they describe is already something that is innately going to be social, happen naturally. What this means is that when we now randomly group people and we now have this group with 15 random people, some of them are going to have rich daddies, some of them are going to have specific skills that are probably going to prove more useful. At the end of the day, that collectivization is going to create the supposed inequality that they are looking to differentiate. Opening opposition and Dunson's speech does one thing specifically, to show you how wizarding and the educational structure of the wizard school will survive. Opening government tells you we want them to be able to socialize so they can live a fruitful life and find girlfriends in the future. I feel like we have to be serious with that. So first extension, before I talk about them more. We think that we need to understand why these house systems exist. House systems are tied to the legacies of the people that the houses are named after, right? So for example, Gryffindor is a founder that provides swords to only people who are Gryffindors. That means that's basically how Harry was able to summon the sword and to protect the palace of Voldemort. The consolidation of these strengths in one group is not just for the protection of that legacy of that founder, but also for the protection of the existence of the entire academy. It means that if you remove it, you are entirely removing the essence and the existence of Hogwarts entirely. It means that you are going to end the legacy of magic as they know it. It means that we think that when you destroy this, they have to defend what the legacy for how they perceive and interpret and apply magic in that world essentially looks like. No. The next thing you need to understand, and this is sort of the first layer of argumentation. I have a note that is missing. Right. Huh? Can I pause? Thank you. I have a note that is missing. Did I just? Oh, don't worry, let me do it. All right. The next layer of argumentation is to understand how our world leads to better outcomes of wizardry. So this is how you have to think about it, yeah? We have wizards. These wizards have strengths, right? We are looking for the best way to be able to train them to ensure that they come out of this as better wizards and as wizards that have some inherent value to Hogwarts. One world, we group them based on the skills that they have. The tall ones, as if you were basketball and on and on and on. If you judge a fish by its ability to fly, it's going to spend the rest of its life believing that it is stupid. In a world where you don't group them based on things that they can actively compete in, we create a scenario where these people continue to believe that they are insufficient by virtue of the fact that they compete against people who have significantly divergent skill sets from them. What that looks like is a world where these people, and this is not just about the ability of competition, but this also ties to the layer of development that you have for someone who is 11 years old when these people get in. It means at that very age, these people tie their prestige and self-esteem to the validation they get from people around them, like their tutors, like their competitors and things like that. In a world where you have this randomness, what it creates is a world where they are unable to compete and they're unable to participate in the way that works. Closing. I want to take you.
So the problem we have is that genuinely you do not explain how any of the traits that they are sorting them by is some basketball thing. All you are doing is a false analogy. So it's hi.
So, panel, this is a problem, right? We think that everybody here agrees that at the end of the day, some grouping has to occur for education to occur. So this debate is not about whether our world is perfect. Our world, this is what our world does, and this is why ours is better. In our world, we're able to put them together and we're able to train them to leverage the skill sets and the traits that they have best in order to become better wizards. In their world, they are unable to do that. We think that what is more likely to happen is that they are going to have rank-based tribalism in their world when they randomly group them, because people are going to look to collectivize based on the things that they have in common, like their family origin, like their blood status and those kinds of things. I think that those are ultimately more harmful to the prestige and to the level of self-esteem that these kids have at such a developmental age. At the end of the day, I don't think that their biggest argumentation can be that it is difficult for them to socialize for multiple reasons. The first is that we think there are multiple other ways that they can socialize before and after they get into Hogwarts. The second is that they enter into classes. They correlate with one another in other ways, right? Houses share classes, houses meet one another. But the third and probably most importantly is that we think that this is not something that must happen exclusive of housing systems. It means that if Hogwarts has an incentive for these people to socialize, there are ways to create new mechanisms for them to socialize that do not distort the ability for us to collectivize them based on their strongest strengths and to allow them to be able to participate in education in the way that allows them to work. At the end of the day, this debate has to be about Hogwarts. Where are we best able to protect its legacy? Where are we best able to sustain the future of magic? Vote opening opposition.
That brings us to the end of the opening half. The House of Assembly invites the member of Congress to begin the closing half. Yeah.
Can I get water? Am I audible? Yeah, so I just want to say that I wrote my shout out speech last year when I thought I'll make Hogwarts finals. And let me look for it and read it out. I pinned the message. So four groups of people. First of all, to my mom for always being excited that I'm doing something cool. And that even though her son doesn't play football and is athletic, she's still proud that I'm doing that I'm still doing something that she thinks is very, very good. The second is to my dad for supporting me with the financial aspect of debate, because debate is very, very, very expensive. The third is to two most important people, to my development, Kojo and Martin. They really taught me really pivotal lessons about debates, about consistency and honing your craft and being intentional about training and debate. And I've used that my whole life. And the fourth is to Opana and Hamza, because without Hamza, Tariq Chaudhry, I hope you are watching this. Yeah. Yeah. I can assure you. Because if I was not sleeping to their debate videos, watching it every day, I wouldn't have had more motivation to do debate. Let's win this trophy. 3, 2, 1. I think on Gav, we need to be very, very realistic with our impact. There has to be a lot for opening governments to explain why the most likely impact from this housing system is things like raising more villains who are going to exploit the system, etc. If you've ever read a good book that has a good villain, you'd realize that there's more nuance to their psychology and how they interpret the world. It's not enough to have a sad backstory of being bullied in school, because incentive analysis for you doing things that they explain are beyond that. For example, you are hungry for power. For example, you just don't respect the laws. 3, even what they explain on Voldemort having an external political ideology to what the debate requires. It means that they are much less comparative than we are. And that's the first strategic point of winning the bench. What we are going to explain are much more realistic and proximate impact to the individual, because the reason why Hogwarts exists as an institution is to help these wizards and witches and become much more powerful people to help them protect the wizarding world. two extensions within this round. First of all, how does this affect the psyche of the kids? And what we're going to do is go deeper into the psychology of kids and how the nature of magic looks like, such that it affects the way they perceive themselves, thereby getting the impact that opening government says on why they most likely would be antagonistic towards the school or antagonistic towards each other. First things first, in framing, what is Hogwarts meant to do? A couple of things. One, Hogwarts is a magical world that should provide a safe space for you. Why? The outside world can be very dangerous to a lot of wizards, but not in the sense that humans are killing the wizards all the time, but on a much more personal level. If you have magic, it can be very difficult for you to control that magic. It can be very difficult for you to know what to do with the magic. There's a lot of confusion with these kids who have such an unspoken and unprecedented power within their hands. Hogwarts serves as a way to guide them and protect them and help them hone their skills. But beyond that, because you are extracting them from the real world, what Hogwarts also serves as doing is to provide alternatives that would have made sure that their identity would have been protected, their confidence would have been protected. So Hogwarts is supposed to be an alternative to the counterfactual of educational systems that would have existed to do all these things for them. So Hogwarts doesn't just serve as being able to get them skills, but even for the people who are not that skillful, Hogwarts is supposed to make sure that they create an environment for them to have a better identity. What is the second mechanism that ensures the way in which this is done? You extract them from their homes, you extract them from their lives. It means most of their identity and what is formed is based on the interactions that they have with their fellow wizards, etc., etc. This is where the mechanism actually comes in, because they give you no mechanism to explain why this is comparative and why this is true. Let's go into this. Third thing in framing. How exactly does this manifest with the psyche? And note that the problem with opening government is that they try to trick the panel by saying something and believing that you somehow know the analysis that explains what they say. It means there has to be a psychological analysis of what these kids are and what uniquely causes magical systems to affect the confidence that opening government says, also weighing opening opposition on what is much more important for these kids. Why does this work this way? Cognitive bias. The problem with how magic works and how using magic or whatever to divide these kids is that magic has an air of finality. It has a prophetic atmosphere to it, such that if you are told that you are going to this house because your dominant ability is your intelligence, what it does is that it limits you to one specific area. The analysis here is that what magic does uniquely different from what happens within the status quo in our real world is that the mechanism is magic, and it tells you that this is where you are because that's your dominant trait. The comparative that happens in the real world is that kids are allowed to explore other alternatives, which makes them better in the vast majority of instances. What magic does is that it locks people into these kinds of ideas. But the obvious response is, but they will have different ways of exploring. But this is the problem. The analysis here is that people, especially kids, have an authority bias. That is why kids who have been told by their parents that they are lazy will constantly be lazy, because in their heads, subconsciously, they think that that is who they are because this is the authority that has told them that. Beyond that, things like even religion, that tells us who we are, that we are sinners. The reason why you don't believe that you are exceptionally holy and you are not without sin is because there's an air of authority that has explained to you why you should be the way that you are. What this explains is why they would much more likely believe that they are supposed to be this or that. But beyond that, the response cannot be to find other exploration, because we explain that even though this is not explicitly stated, this is implicit. Even though they can tell you that there are other traits that exist, or I don't even think that's the case. Even though they can explain that, maybe through interactions they can find out who they are and all those kinds of things, we've explained that the preconditionality for you to explore who you are is when you don't have that air of authority around you. Before I get into why this is important, which impacts what opening government says beyond the whole exploitation thing, which is non-comparative for this debate, opening opposition.
Regardless of whether we group them or not, they will still be strong in these traits, and they will still be told by tutors that they are strong in this.
Raymond, Exactly. So if we abolish the system, we don't have the teachers telling them that they are predominant. Unless you don't read the info slide, that cannot be the case. But beyond that, the analysis that we've given explains why this is going to be the case. Let's go into actual impacts that are comparative for this debate. First of all, how does this affect the psyche of the child? The one important duty for Hogwarts is also to raise competent wizards. As example, fighting in battles, etc., to protect the world. Two crucial impacts of this. First of all, in battlefields, there are specific things that have to be balanced. For example, skills, example, IQ, etc. Our analysis explains why these wizards will not go beyond what the sphere of personality explains to them. But secondly, over here, that is the analysis that explains why there will be antagonism towards people in the school. And this is the unique analysis. They just assess that there will be bullying and all those things. Why is this the analysis? Here is the thing. Certain traits become much more important than other traits based on the successes of those traits or those houses. So certain wizards go out and are famous for winning battles, etc. What this does is that it creates a signal that the most powerful house or the most important house is maybe Slytherin, etc., particularly because of their personality. But the analysis that proves this is the ability for people to perceive other successes of other wizards or external to them as having these kinds of things, which makes them look much more important. At the end of the debate, even if antagonism is not important, we would agree that this is very trite and is not the debate. At the end of this debate, it's about the children and their psychology. Let's protect them the way we do in our schools. So proud to win this round.
The house power, thank you.
All right. So I would like to give a shout out to I would like to call them the La Casa de la Chipalago people. Like the reason it's important is that I think coming to the university and being in life is like being in a prison, and then with people who are very dearest to you, the prison sentence feels lighter when they are there. The joys that go off when you smile and the jokes that you laugh at are the things that you remember. None of these things else matters. Thank you very much.
Oh my God.
Life is a prison.
By the way, guys, life is not a prison. Please, somebody should record this. Life is not a prison. Life is sweet. You give very good speeches. Sometimes you win. All right. So, starting in 3, 2, 1, we can break the codes that we are assigned to. No one is a lost cause, and no one is a pipe dream ready to be washed away. Severus Snape came from House Slytherin. At the end of the day, he was the biggest protector of Harry Potter against the Dark World and against Voldemort. Black, who was a terrible person, at the end of the day, wanted to be better. Slughorn, who lived with literal Death Eaters, was a person who changed and knew that within, evil is bad and good is better. People who were literally engineered to be terrible and with no interaction and no one else to tell them bad, within themselves, with a God-given thing known as conscience, knows, for example, Dobby, that your life cannot always be in servitude and always be in kowtowing to the things that are not good to you. We can break the codes we are given and we can be better people. Two things then before I continue to my 3 extensions. One, it's important to note the thing of personal choice and exposure in today's debate. It's extremely ridiculous for these guys to say that there is no interaction. And judges, please go to your sheet. And I know we are really good at tracking because judging these guys will be a reflection of you and not that argument they gave. They say there's literally no interaction. It came from this guy. It is a lie. When they are going to class, it's just a dormitory they put them in. They interact with others. We literally said it's a POI that these guys literally stole. The years before they enter Hogwarts are years in which they interact with each other. The years after which you live are years which you interact with each other. The fluidity that the mind has and the ability for the mind to be bended, that you can be a bad person today, you can choose to be a conservative person, but you can choose to be liberal, means that there is literally for everybody sitting here that ability to break your codes and be who you want to be. But continuing then, we want to talk about something which these guys say, which to be very honest, are offshoots of these people. Like literally. Let's start with this. The issue of growth means that at every point, you probably leave Hogwarts one day. You probably see things that are better. There's no stage at which the human being cannot be molded. People can be alcoholics till their 30s and stop. People can choose to be investment bankers and decide to be doctors, which means that the learning ability of the mind is not one that ever comes to a permanent stop. But secondly, the thing is that with interaction with others, that we say people can take on new identities. But the comparative is not something that these guys establish. These people establish a comparative with a different name, but it's the same thing. What does Eziel say? I'll literally tell you what Eziel says. Eziel says that issue number one is that what you put them somewhere where, let me say it as Eziel says, that pure bloods, half bloods can live with each other. That is literally what happens in Hogwarts. People like Harry Potter who speak to snakes are in places without people that speak to snakes. So what is the delta on his side when he's saying the same thing, just stupider? Then what do these people say? There's literally no comparative. You know the reason why this is more important? Their own is that end it all. The question becomes, and this is what they do. Fleku would come and take the most viable thing that he wants. Are you stopping the school and stopping harnessing of education for witchcraft kids who have no other alternatives? Or are you going to stop it and bring what system? Because socially, without you putting them somewhere that gives them the strength to one thing or give them a purpose, within you, you know that if you are a very empathetic person, you are probably going to go for very empathetic jobs. Because in life, you need purposes. In life, you need things that you are more attuned to. But equally, socially, individuals, because they want to be nice and compliment you, will tell you that Matthew, you look extremely good, and when you dress in coats, we love it. You will try to do that because that's how nice people are, and that's how you dress, which means that every other thing is literally going to tell you this, and it is not a bad thing. Why is this not a bad thing? The same reason why you can change your identity, the exposure, the growth, etc., are the reasons why you literally become better. But these people say burdens that are really huge that they cannot achieve. The issue is, listen to his first two reasons why there are wars, and I'm not going to be the team that's telling you that will stop wars. Stopping wars means what? Killing Voldemort. If you kill Voldemort, Harry Potter goes away. That's another debate. This issue is that the ideological and familial issue. When you want to solve an ideological and familial issue, you do not stop the house sorting systems, because the root cause of these things are the people like Voldemort who still have ties to the house, not the house. So the house are not flawed by design. They are flawed because in the implementation, individuals who are not good consistently have that. If Voldemort exists, if the Malfoy family exists, these things are going to happen specifically, and these are not things that you can stop. But at every point, you realize the problem these guys have is only a problem with House Slytherin. If you peel back the euphemisms and hear the very things they really say, which means that for 3/4 of the houses, there's nothing terrible. But for one house, there's something inside. And what's the issue? But I'll still talk about the identity matter and still take it off. The first and most important thing, and the reason why our extension would win, is that when you do this, the process of abolishing the house literally endangers the school. Who are the people that set this school up, and what's the relevance of this school? You have people like forefathers. You have people like literal aristocrats with millions of dollars in the Muggle world. People like the Malfoy family who feel their legacy is there. People like the Potter family. Literal marriages came out of this school. People were the best Quidditch players. The things that are most inside them was that they played for House Slytherin and they were the best. People like the Ministry of Magic are people who are alumnuses of this house. At the point where you want to strip away the identity of the very individuals that created the school, what happens? What happens is you become at loggerheads with these individuals that control everything that happens. What is the mechanism for why this is bad? Because of that antagonism, they will try to downplay you. So monies that come from the Malfoy family, the frameworks that allow Hogwarts to exist and Dumbledore to have power, are things that are going to be stripped away because you are attacking the very foundation of their beliefs, and the relevance of that goes away. The impacts that you can avoid because you didn't take my POI. Three things. One, you can no longer harness power, which means change them to be better people and educate them to be better. Secondly, the training that you give them are things that go away, and the protection that you give these guys literally goes away. Time's out. Let's talk about identity and why it's important. But before that, critical weighing. If this house doesn't exist, every other thing that is built on top of this house and that emanates from it would not be there. You can snap, you did not weigh like that. Second thing, let's talk about identity. You take kids that are 12 to 17, take their real lives from UK, put them in the bus and ship them away. You tell them there's an existential threat, and then you put these 13 to 14-year-old people away from their parents for the next 14 years, and you say you cannot sleep together in houses where there are people who feel the same pain as you, when there are people who are lost and misunderstood as you. What happens in that instance? The bonds that they share, the fears that come together, the ability for me to share my problems with Ekradonko and feel that catharsis that emanates from within, the protection I get knowing that I sleep in the same room with Nathaniel Fleku, and if somebody comes to attack us, we'll be able to jump them. The belonging and the sense that's there, the belonging and the sense that's there, and the love that emanates are very important thing. If the problem is our Slytherin, make sure the attack, just manage it, and make sure that people like the Voldemortians go. The joys that comes and the smiles are very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. To help now invite the government to summarize the government again. Please remember that the time. Please. Number 12.
All right. Wow.
Oh my God.
How do you? I don't want to hold it. I'll just shout. Charlie, Abi, if you just stay here, chill, right? The mic. I don't want to hold that. Like, yeah. Okay, thanks. All right. So a couple shout outs and then I'll get to it. First to Avogan. He trained me at Katanga, gave me my best moments in debate, honestly. Yeah. Second to Dorvlo, he's been my roommate for 2 years now. Annoying, but yeah. Third to my family, Charlie. Then try. And then try. From valedictorian to... Yeah. But that's a different chat for a different day. All right. Yeah, and to Dela, yeah, it's been a great run, actually. Hogwarts final is crazy, man. And shout out to someone special in the crowd, Charlie. Sorry. All right, so let's get to it. All right. Oh, special request to make All right, let's start now. Okay, so closing opposition genuinely has no extension. The first thing they present is a neuroplasticity case.
The problem is, check your notes. These guys also tell you that you can interact with other people, you can learn new things. What is Dorvlo's analysis for why neuroplasticity exists? Two things. First, it gives you a long list of examples of things that people have changed. So Snape helped Harry. Some black guy did something. Dobby did something. Genuinely, we don't know if it's true. But even if it is, there's a vast number of people who go through the Hogwarts school system, who go through all the houses. Look at the number of people he's been able to list. Genuinely, it's very hard. But secondly, even if it is true, think about it. First, let's create the harm. Then let's hope that the people are able to solve it by going to therapy later. No, I don't think that's a good thing within the round. It's net negative on neuroplasticity. The second thing is, it endangers the school. Let's examine this claim. It's very interesting. He says that people have identities that are beholden to the houses they were in. So if you change it, they will get angry. First of all, no explanation for why these people are like super conservative, they don't understand new things, those things. But secondly, genuinely, it's literally the world of magic. Like, I don't know how the economic system works there for such a reason that maybe some one Snape family can say we are withholding all the money we give to the school, so like then the school collapses. Like, it's a big impact though for you to say that all the alumni go vex, they won't give you money again. Like, he really needs to establish that like the alumni people, like they all literally want the house thing to continue to exist into perpetuity. So like once you do it, they are not reasonable. They cannot talk to the school authorities about why it's happening. Maybe there'll be some alumni engagement, for instance, before the process happens. Like, bans don't just come out of the blue. Like, one day the school wakes up and say, let's do it. Even in KNUST, like there are a lot of alumni who are attached to the way the single-sex halls were established. When it happened, there was a little giddy here and there. The alumni from KNUST are the most powerful people in this school. If the thing Dorvlo says alumni are against change is true, they probably would have like cut funding to the school and held the VC to like ransom until the VC changed it back. But no, they understood the problems the VC was trying to solve via these things. And so even though there was pushback, ultimately they were able to come to certain things. Once in a while, a few clashes happen here and there. So we might agree that maybe a few alumni will vex, maybe a few people will do clashes. But the impact they want, that the school will break down, the school close, it does not happen within the debates. That second thing also does not happen. The third thing then is, identity. So like when you go to the school, you've left your family at an early age, you need people to bond. Think about the claim. The implication for this claim is that once we abolish house systems, people don't have friends anymore. People don't go to class. People don't meet people they can go on adventures with anymore. Like, the only way you get that outcome is if, like, once we ban Gryffindor and everything, then, like, Harry cannot make friends. Honestly, I don't think that's the debate. Like, you people are very reasonable. You will not accept that claim. Let's deal with opening then. Dela is very right. Our opening makes certain claims, like they mention arguments. But look at your notes. There's no real mech for how we get there. Let's take the first general claim they say. They say that school is supposed to be holistic. It's supposed to help you to meet other people in the world. How do they explain how the school will not help you do these things? Because you're in the same house, like you won't meet other people. It's a lie. These people tell you. Like, you go to class with other people from different places. You like from different houses. You can build an affinity toward them. You can see how they do these things. But beyond that, genuinely, I do not understand how, like, being in a house that they say is this, they say is bravery, so then you die. Like, you get, like, there's no real mech on it. The only thing they say is you can't interact. The interaction claim is not true because, like everybody has said, you still interact with them within a thing. What is the exclusive mechanism Dela gives you? There's two things about the way in which the imposition of the house thing causes you to aspire to something you can never reach to and constantly makes you feel like you are not enough. What does Dela tell you? It is not just a random thing of your teacher says you are brave or you are loyal or you are smart. It's a literal mystical hat. It comes and sits on your head and tells you you are here. It's imposition a thing on you in something you cannot understand. It feels prophetic. It feels like it is supposed to be a purpose. It's hard to break out of something like that because it is literally lodged within your ideological framework of the world that this is something beyond you. You cannot conceptualize. You cannot control. Neuroplasticity cannot beat this because it is literally prophetic. It's literally mystic. The point at which your therapist can talk you out of the power of the magic hat is the point at which you don't even believe you are a magician, because the magic hat draws its legitimacy from the same place the school itself draws its legitimacy, from the same place you yourself draw the power you draw it from. Crucially, the neuroplasticity does not solve this thing. What is the problem then Dela tells you about how this thing hurts the magical world? The thing about Hogwarts is it's not like any other school, like these guys say. So it's not like a school that's competing against other school and you have to like raise people to like get the best grades. Hogwarts is the fundamental thing that produces magicians for the magic world. When you are churning out unbalanced people, it's a drove of unbalanced people for the magic world. It's a thing that lays fundamentals for oh no, Eziel, let's be serious. It's a thing that creates situations for potential instability later on. Because literally everybody that exists within those confines goes through these things. He may be right, it may lead to war, we don't know, that's not our thing. Maybe to lead to war, but the fundamental first level is that these people are unbalanced. They go through a certain amount of angst. These are things you cannot solve on their side. He does not prove that. Let's take a PR before.
So there's no comparative in these guys. And we do not say the schools destroy. We say when you lose funding or support, the extent.
Why is there no comparative, no explanation? The comparative is that there's no magic hat telling you that you are supposed to brave for your entire life, that you are supposed to be intelligent for your entire life. That's the one defining thing about you is that you are loyal. So even when someone cheats on you, you still have to be loyal because the magic hat says you are loyal. Crucially, what is the delta then on the last case? The thing about this school is that it's supposed to be the nurturing place, the protectionist place for you. Because you leave your house at 9 years old. An orphan like Harry, you leave an abusive place at 9 years old. You come into this big new place where there's supposed to be some history of your mother walked through these walls. Everything is overarching and bigger than you. You are facing bigger things that are life-threatening. You've never seen it in your life before. The one place that should protect you in your most vulnerable moments, shape you, is the same place that's imposing a massive amount of existential angst on you because it's telling you to reach to something you can never see and you can never probably be. Because it asks you to be the embodiment of the literal traits that your house is. Nobody can be a perfect embodiment, but what does it do? It follows you through life. That is the thing about what Dela tells you about why this is crucial. Because it means that for the rest of your life, you are unable to escape these things. You are constantly asking yourself, is this good? Am I good enough? Am I intelligent enough? Am I loyal enough? Crucially, we think this is bad because these people wield massive amounts of power. And when you have unbalanced people who wield massive amounts of power, you literally threaten the existence of the world. That's the ultimate outcome on CG. We win the debate.
Okay, so I'm about to start. Let's start from closing government. Their case is that it is a mystical hat that is self-fulfilling in nature, and therefore at every single point in time you believe that this is the way in which you should live your life. First question, are the people happy with these decisions? They don't explain why the vast majority of individuals that find themselves specifically in this house are not happy with the specific decisions that the hat makes for them. Crucially, the way in which the hat makes the decision is not some mystical thing. It is magic. The hat can know what your trait is, and based on knowledge of the trait, it allocates you specifically to a house. It means that at the end of the day, it is allocating you to what your preference would have been as a person and what you yourself as a person like. This is quite crucial because if it is true that along the line you are likely to change as a person, what Dorvlo explains to you is that there is actually a changing mechanism, and it gives to you a host of examples as to individuals that have changed their perspectives. What this essentially proves to you is that one, the allocation is what people actually like, but then secondly, at points where people do not like the allocation, they change their identity as individuals, meaning that it is not true that people are locked up in identities that they cannot change. The mechanism for why people are locked up in identities is that they don't have the capacity to interact with external factors. Open opposition is right, that they actually have the capacity to engage with external factors, meaning that the extent to which they can be able to get access to a host of identities is something that is true. So it is not true that you are locked up in one identity and you have no idea of the other identities that potentially exist, because in truth you actually have the knowledge of all these other identities. But the problem then is that it becomes assertion versus assertion. This person says that you have classes. These people say you do not have classes. Which one is true? And this is where the response is crucial, because the response proves to you why the school has an incentive to make sure that you are not locked up in one specific house. Because when you are locked up in one specific house, there is self-propagation of potential evil that cannot be checked by the school, and the school has an incentive to make sure that that does not happen, and for that reason they have an incentive to make sure that you engage with other things. Secondly, the reason why the school has an incentive is because the school wants you to learn other things. This response proves to you why it is not just an assertion that you have other classes, but you have the incentive to have, the school has the incentive to establish those particular structures that allows you to get access to all of the specific identities. We don't think that they are charity in that regard. Second part of our extension, they don't respond to it. You don't have extension, you don't have extension. They don't respond to any specific thing. This is quite crucial. Dorvlo is very smart. Dorvlo does not give you the mechanisms from himself. He borrows the mechanism that the teams themselves say. Because listen to it. Opening opposition says there is a legacy. Take that one. Opening government says that these individuals in the future are going to be discriminatory because of the idea that they are holding to a specific house in that regard. The third thing he tells you, which is specifically from him, is that they have built certain important connections out of the back of those houses. These connections are connections like marriages, and this is quite crucial. Their identity was shaped by the house, and their identity is aligned to the house, and they care so much so for the existence of the house. Intuition pump. I am a Katanga boy. When they decided to disrupt the Katanga system, there was huge riots because the alumni that recognized that this is the mechanism under which I became an identity, this is who I am as a person, decided that they will not let this be something that happens. The ways in which this is most likely to manifest, and I want you to understand that the way in which they respond to this is that it is not going to happen that way, but they don't respond to the specific mechanism that proves why it is going to happen that way. This is quite crucial. What happens is multiple things which they equally don't respond to. One, likelihood of pooling funding, because at the end of the day, you are going to destroy the